Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us in this unraveling tree ID. I'm Val Thomas, and I'd like to introduce my invaluable botanical colleague, Dr. Marié de Toit. She keeps me on the straight and narrow scientific path whenever I wander, and that's making her laugh because that's often. It is she who may be responsible for putting tonight's presentation together. Thank you, dear Marié. I really enjoy working with you. Together, we'll be covering the methods we believe will help you unravel the ID of trees. Our deepest thanks to Shane. You've all just met him, incredibly warm, encouraging, professional, and he hosted this webinar for us and set it up. If we all enjoy this presentation tonight, the compliments must flow to Shane too. Thank you. And we'd like to thank Chicana Media, who helped to publicize the event and get you all here tonight. I wanted to give you a short story up front. And I'm not going to give a sales pitch for anything tonight. We genuinely believe that you will benefit from understanding how to ID trees using the two products that are central in all the discussions. This talk will use these two tools because they are designed to be user-friendly, beginner-friendly. They were designed from scratch for citizens with no botanical training to learn to know their indigenous trees and therefore be more proactive about conservation. Above all, we want you to enjoy the evening. And as a starting point, this evening is the starting point of the pleasures that unraveling tree IDs will continue to give you in the wild. I want to talk briefly about why I am so passionate about trees and conserving the indigenous ones. It's very simple. They bring me incredible joy. They are very often beautiful in varying, exciting, interesting surroundings. They test my mind, they widen my experiences, they challenge my memories, and they are often home or a passing place of safety or food for other natural creatures that are fun to look at, find, and observe. Above all, once trees are a vibrant, conscious part of your life, you will travel differently and go to unusual places you might never otherwise have seen, just for the amazing trees, as my husband Pete and I have done for 35 years now. Amongst the almost literally thousands of memories, and good Lord, more than thousands of photographs, I'd like to share Pete's great photographs of a few special moments. On the left here, a fever tree near Olifants Camp in Kruger. This is a 360-year-old wild plum, Harpophyllum caffra, in a private garden alongside the Van Riebeck almond hedge, which is in the background in Kirstenbosch, a jacoberry northern in Mpumalanga, a cedarberg in Cape Cedar in the Cedarberg, a white-stemmed shepherd's tree in Madikwe, the base of the King Edward VII tree, Deep Valor Station in the Western Cape, an immense small-leaved yellowwood, and finally, my pride and joy, two very rare trees. On the left, an Amteza listeriana called Amteza near East London, and the hyena poison bush in the Gifberg Western Cape. These two have very, very, very small distributions. Thank you, Pete, for taking me to all the incredible trees, all the incredible events, and all the memories. I could actually spend 45 minutes just doing this. Now, knowing the names of these trees deepens the experience. The knowledge of names opens hundreds of channels of thought, and I would simply not experience those thoughts if all I saw was a pretty green tree with green leaves and a brown trunk. You know, that's a pretty accurate description of about 1,000 species anywhere in the world, indigenous or not. Green leaves and a brown trunk. Without the pinpoint of a name, there's just so much I cannot think about when I see the green and brown tree. When I see an indigenous tree, I want to know, who is it? Who are its relatives? What is its history in our country? Very often, where have I seen it before? What role does it play in the lives of earlier human tribes? Why does it grow here? What does it contribute to the other forms of life, animals, fungus, algae? And the question everybody asks me, how old is it, Val? And then the next immense question is, how does such a relatively small trunk carry the weight of such incredibly wide-spreading branches? That's a question that taunts us often in the wild. when we think of the weight of wood, it is incredible. Now, I need to say up front a little bit about conservation, that indigenous trees need to be conserved, but it's a huge other topic. And we'll have to try and add it in at odd moments in this mini-series. But just quickly, here are 3 of our most endangered trees, very small distributions. I mentioned those 2, and the Clanwilliam Cape Cedar in the Cedarburg. That is also a very endangered tree. Now, I often hear trees are not easy to ID, but there are some mistakes to avoid. The common mistake is that people who are disappointed often have not set aside the time to understand and learn the basics. With most people, they learn a few trees of the species at a camp in a national park or on a family farm, and they know these specific individuals, but they cannot work out why they can't simply apply that knowledge to the whole country. And by next year, they've forgotten what they thought they knew the year before. The core of the problem is that tree IDs are a totally different ballgame from birds, mammals, etc. They're different from birds, which is partly why we even need a talk on a series like this of unraveling tree ID. Centrally, it's because no 2 trees of the same species are ever alike, naturally, individually identical, but birds are. A lilac-breasted roller, whether it's a photograph or an artwork, or a lilac-breasted roller on a twig, or a lilac-breasted roller grabbing insects on the ground, they're all immediately recognizable as this bird. They have very obvious, reliable, measurable sets of fixed characteristics. And these fixed characteristics are the first impression you have of each bird that helps you confirm the ID. Unfortunately, we do not have that advantage in trees. The impact of the picture differs radically from tree to tree, unless you know what to look for in finer detail. I have never seen 2 leadwood bush willows that are identical in overall external shape. Thank you, Ian Thomas. I know you're listening, for that wonderful picture. I generally recognize most leadwood bush willows because over the years I've absorbed the most important characteristics. For the moment, I'm going to call these patterns. There's a reason as we talk. So, for example, the patterns of the bark, or the color and the texture, the patterns of the leaves, etc. Now, I know the different patterns that make a leadwood bush willow's overall shape, and tells me that it's different from a marula or a weeping boerbean. The important word here is patterns. Patterns are a set of fixed characteristics that vary within a predictable range. The trick of unraveling tree ID isn't that you see one of a species and internalize that actual image, as you would with the lilac-breasted roller, and say, now I know a marula. It's more complex than that. You need to know the basic patterns that differentiate marullas from all other species around them. So now we're going to start talking about the fixed characteristics of a lilac-breasted roller and the characteristics with variable range that are trees. So the lilac-breasted roller is recognized by the set of fixed characteristics. But trees essentially have fixed characteristics too, but they have a range that varies between 2 points. There's no need to be anxious about these fancy words, and patterns and fixed points sounds more daunting than our lilac-breasted roller. One of the joys is that the patterns mostly fall within well-researched, well-defined ranges. Ranges that we can all search through and we know are reliable. Take leaf sizes. Thank you, Robbie Robinson, for this picture of our firethorn currant Russ, which is a 3-leaflet compound leaf. And you can see, this is the top of the leaf, this is the bottom of the leaf, you can see how different the sizes are off the same tree. But the ranges of the length and of the width of the blade and the length of the leaf stalk are reliable for each species, even if that range is quite wide. The same if we look at fruit color. These fruit colors are reliable for the African white stinkwood. They don't go black or red or purple. Here we've got the forest spoonwood, and this is really quite a brown looking bark, and it can be gray, but that is recorded. That's part of the varying characteristic of this particular tree. Here's a really dramatic one. Here we've got the sweet thorn acacia, and on this left-hand picture, you can't even see the thorns. But on this right-hand one, taken at Shamwari, the length of the thorns is absolutely stupendous, and yet they are both sweet thorn acacias. Now, I'm going to reinforce it. There's no need to be anxious that patterns sounds daunting. That's why you're here for not just one evening, but 3. By the time we're finished, we're going to prove to you that an app is a fun-based hobby and will help your success to actually set out and discover indigenous trees. Essentially, that's what we're going to do with you. We're going to teach you how to access the most reliable patterns for most species by the easiest, fastest routes. Why take any extra time if we don't need to? The commitment from us is how to access the most reliable patterns for most species. Now, your ambition, I'm hoping, is going to be, after these 3 evenings, that you decide that getting to know tree IDs is a defined ambition. You allocate calendar time in the next few months. And you remember back to the core problem. The core problem is that people don't learn the basics. And you're not going to learn the basics by watching TV or going to play paddle or sitting at a big meal. You actually have to put just a little bit of groundwork into it. But you're starting off with 3 evenings. That's fantastic. We're going to continue from then and become tree experts. Now, to start with, I'd like to do some quite deep level thinking as to where your own talents and skills and disabilities lie. This is so that you end up choosing the right way to unravel trees for yourself. According to who you are and how you learn, you're likely to need a number of different ways to ID trees. I've learned a lot from various expert people who all know trees well. How they learn to differentiate species has taught me a lot. Now, this is not about me, and it's not about them. I want you to try to establish who you are. Where do you fit in with one of the types of people I'm going to describe? And then you can decide for yourself what is your best way forward. What I've learned is that some people are at the Z end of a spectrum, and that spectrum, the Z end, are people like me with very poor visual memory. Now, that's visual memory. I actually have a very reliable memory for trees. Not so reliable when it comes to packing and going on holiday. But visual memory, I really am absolutely abysmal. So that's the Z end of the spectrum, an empty box. This shows you how little I remember of what I see, unless I consciously focus on what I am seeing. As an example, if I'm on a long car journey and I just casually watch out the window, just observing, what other people are seeing is on this extreme right-hand side. Everybody's on a spectrum. So some people will sort of, this is what you see and remember. Sorry, this is what you see and remember. I see it, but I don't remember it. Some people remember a bit, that I basically remember nothing. Now, for many years, until I realized how other experts were able to see things, it affected my ability to learn trees. Another example is if I go into a shopping center, I can easily become confused as to the direction back to the car. And I'm sure you look at my white hair and you say, that goes with the age group. Not at all. I've been like this since high school. In both examples, the car journey and the shopping trip, the way I cope with this disability is by knowingly superimposing some fixed characteristics on the visual experience of the moment. So now we've got the slide. So in the shopping centre, this is honest to truth. As I walk in, I say, oh, there's Woolies on my left, there's Dis-Chem on my right. I turn the corner at the P&A, so when I come back, I must remember to turn at the P&A, and there's Seattle Coffee Company right down on the right-hand side. Otherwise, I'm hopelessly lost. And then I can't find my way back to the car, and it's all very embarrassing. Back to the example of the car journey. Pete and I travel long journeys through South Africa many times each year. Now we're back to passion and joy. Knowing the tree names simply changes everything. Wherever we drive, I'm able to name the trees we see, most of them, some of them, and this adds significantly to my excitement, my interest, and of course, my memory of each journey. Now, if you're a person like me, and you cannot easily visualize or recall places you've been to until you've either had multiple repetitions. Obviously, if you go to the same shopping center regularly, you don't have to say Woolies and Dis-Chem and whatever. You learn it. So you've either had multiple repetitions or you've superimposed some fixed characteristics. Now, if you are one of these Z people and perhaps weren't that aware of it before, you're likely to struggle with tree IDs because your visual memory is not bringing up the triggers that it does in other people. You really cannot hope to name trees reliably without a very superb guide. Now, at the far end of the extreme, we have people who have almost photographic memories, and they look at this image of a tree and they remember it. Obviously, these two extremes, Z and A, are extremes, and most people will be in the middle or to one side. But many people are closer to Z than to A. And you need to think about that and wonder just how hard you'll have to work to get your memory to tie in with what your eyes have seen. A visual memory person, like this person, you can look at it and see it, their brains do not need to superimpose fixed characteristics to help them remember patterns that lead to the idea of a tree. Their eyes and their brain see and they remember. If you're that kind of person, you'll remember them more easily. But, and it's a very big but, even with an A-type visual ability, you cannot know a tree name and then expect immediately to be able to repeat that knowledge when seeing other trees of the same species. This will only be the case once you've seen one typical tree that is correctly named, and you have found some reliable ID characteristics that you can clearly see and recognize. For example, if you've never seen a boer bean and someone just says boer bean, you will need to have numerous boer beans named for you before your own mind starts to see the recognizable patterns. Now, in these two pictures, I actually see no recognizable patterns. Only once you have that knowledge of what to look for will you remember the tree and recognize each of its species. So even said people need the guide that tells them what those distinguishing features are, those fixed characteristics. Of course, it's a lot easier to recognize a boer bean if it happens to have these amazingly wonderful flowers, or perhaps the pods, which are very distinguishable and unusual. Now, what are the methods of gaining this knowledge of these distinguishing characteristics? Over the past 30 years, I've had the luck to have two incredible teams of colleagues. And with these skilled and dedicated people, we have developed two separate products for, and I'm repeating it, citizens with no botanical training to learn to know their indigenous trees. And those two products are the Sappi Tree Spotting Series and the TreeApp South Africa. These two products appeal to very different people. Again, we're asking you to listen carefully and decide who you think you are to avoid being disappointed with your future strategy of how to unravel trees. This is not a sales pitch, it's options for you. There are other wonderful field guides out there needing various amounts of botanical knowledge, but we believe our two approaches are the best for beginner tree people who don't have botanical training. But all these books can add to the joy once you know a few indigenous trees. I wouldn't actually start with any of these, but me personally, Val, I use them all the time just to check facts and enjoy trees in a wider way. Now, the first of our two approaches is the Sappi tree spotting series of 5 books, which I wrote with Dr. Rena Grant in the late 1990s onwards. Lowveld and Bushveld were the first 2, and now these 2 are both available to buy as new 4th edition. Very, very exciting to have them still going since 1996, I think it was. These 3 are currently out of print and only available in second-hand shops, and they will be released over the next 18 months in 2024 and 25. And we're going to cover how these books work in more detail soon. Now, the TreeApp South Africa is the second product. It took 10 years to develop. Thank you, Dr. Robbie, and evolved into the TreeApp, launched in 2017. This is now in its 2nd edition, as we can see from the information here, and it now covers both original, the TreeApp, and Trees Botanical, and this we cover later too. Both these tools, the Sappi tree spotting and the apps, can serve you as superb guides as a newcomer to unraveling trees. Now we're going to concentrate for a while on Sappi tree spotting, just to give you a brief introduction. There's one sentence that describes the entire system. That is, look for the right trees in the right places. That is the core of Sappi tree spotting. And there's a verb in there, look for. If you're choosing to learn trees using this series, you will choose the correct book for the specific geographical area you're in. And I'm not going to name them again, but here they are: Lowveld, Highlands, KwaZulu, Bushveld, Cape. Each book is divided into ecozones. And in this picture here of the map, there's you can see this is ecozone M, which stands for mixed bushveld, and ecozone S, which is sourveld. And the expectation is that because you're in bushveld, there are certain trees there. But if you're in mixed bushveld, that itself has different trees from the sourveld. So we're slowly zoning down to what you can expect to go and look for. Once you're in the right ecozone, you then look for a habitat. Now, a habitat is a thing like a river or a kloof, a rocky area, what looks like a plain here, a mountainside. There's certain pages in the book which look very short here, but they're long lists of those trees that you can expect to find in ecozone M, mixed bushveld, along a river and a kloof, or in a rocky area. So we're actually turning this into a treasure hunt. You're not going to go on your map to somewhere in the mixed bushveld. You're going to go to a rocky area, and you expect to see an eastern sesame bush. Page 98. And there it is. There's 98. And it's got all the information about this tree that we're going to go and look for. It has a section called the GIF, which is general information, form and features taken from the jizz of a bird. You now read that and internalize it, and you set out and look for a stout succulent tree with swollen branch, etc., etc. You can see the flowers, you can see what the trunk looks like, and you search for that tree. Now, it's a very good system if you're relatively unskilled. If you know fewer than 20 trees in any area, I assure you, you will definitely increase your knowledge quite rapidly. I learned my first 400 trees this way, throughout South Africa, of course. This is quite impressive. The kind of person who enjoys Sappi tree spotting is usually fairly innovative, with a good imagination, and they can carry ideas from words and pictures across into reality. So you can imagine the stout succulent tree from its picture, from that picture, and you can set out to look for them. They're usually less methodical and disciplined than those who enjoy the more structured process of the tree app. Sappi tree spotting is a treasure hunt, and it really is fun. The next possibility is the TreeApp South Africa. It's totally different, and it's a different method of personality who will learn to enjoy this. I must just comment that this is the main home screen, and if you've got the evaluation version, you probably have a word underneath original botanical saying evaluation, but it's the same app. Marié will explain, you've got fewer trees. This is much more traditional method of keying and drilling down. The whole approach is very different. You start with 117 trees and you go into leaves, you click. It's a simple leaf, which we'll come to discussing. You now drop straight down, zip to 870, which is exciting. You then put in, does it have thorns? And the thorns are present on leaflet parts, not succulent. And here's the picture. Zip, you go down to one tree. There's only one tree in South Africa with those features. It won't always be as quick as that, I must tell you. This filters the original list of 1,400 trees according to the information you provide. The type of people who enjoy and are successful with the tree app have come to the happy understanding that this too is a game. And here you are totally in charge of entering a series of data, of information into the app, one fact at a time, and things that you understand and recognize and can see, not difficult botanical things. Each time you enter it, you'll see the number gets less. We'll devote the rest of the time of tonight's talk using and understanding the tree app. Now, if you've got your app with you and you open to the home screen, and I'm going to hand over to Marié.
There we go. Okay, so this is the Android version. You will see there's some slight differences when we get to them. So my screen is the Android version, and you will see just below the name there are two versions, original and botanical. Switching between them is very easy. And as I said, the buttons are located just below the app names. So if you press the button, you can just easily toggle between them. So you click on botanical and you will see that it switches to botanical. And if I press on original, you will see it switch to original. And you can toggle between this at any time, and it's very easy. Please set your version, your active version, to original, and you will see it is highlighted in green. So the original version is in plain English, and the botanical version is in classical botanical terms. Both versions function identically, but the main difference is just between the terminology. On the home screen, you will see there are two rows of buttons at the bottom of the screen, and we are going to start to set up our app so that it suits our needs. So the first thing we are going to do is we are going to click on settings. You will see it's the second button from the left. I'm going to click on it now. So if you are following, you can click on settings on your app as well. And you will see there are various options which you can explore at your leisure. At this stage, please tap on the green bar below the heading primary language. So I'm going to click on that. And we are going to set it to English. At this stage, I'm just going to say that the Apple and the Android versions look slightly different. In Apple, the options to select come up as a gray block at the base of the screen, and then you scroll between the options and leave it on the selected choice. And then you will see in the top corner of that gray block, there is a check mark, and then you check on that to save your selections. Our primary language is now English, and then the other choice we're going to make at this stage is the grouping of the trees. So you will see when I click on grouping of trees, which is the third option, there is also a few options available. And for tonight, we're going to set it on general English names. So as a reminder, again, please look at it later on and see there's a lot of options, and you will follow the same process in the Apple that you did previously. There will be that gray block, and please remember to click on the check mark to save your selection. Another difference in the Apple version is that in the top left-hand corner, you can see on my screen, there is a little picture of a house. In the Apple version, that will be an X. That is the button to press to go back to the home screen. and we are going to press that now. The next button that I'm going to tell you about is the tree list. You will see that is the third button on the top row to the right. And for now, you only have to understand the following. Tree list exists, and remember, you can always find it on the home screen. So if I click on the tree list, and I open the tree list, this is the main heart of our app where all the information is stored about all of the species. And you will see that the tree list offers you an encyclopedia of information about each species. It doesn't really matter how you decide to identify your tree. The information here is invaluable for anyone who wants to learn about trees. You will see in my screen at the top, there is a numeral 1177. This tells you how many species are in this list that you are looking at right now. If you have the evaluation version, yours will be on 155. If you have the full version, you might see 1399, and this is because there are 222 additional difficult species which are activated, which can also be included in the list, but I'm not going to go into that now. So there are a number of ways that this number at the top will gradually or rapidly drill down to fewer and fewer species, and we'll see that in a minute. So by testing your own app, you will see, and I showed it briefly, that you can scroll up and down. Please remember, scroll on the left-hand side. If I go on the right, in Apple, you will see there's an A, B, C, D, E. In the Android, if I just put my finger there, you will see I can rapidly switch between the alphabet letters. So that's why you have to scroll on the left-hand side if you want to slowly scroll through your list. And if you want to quickly go to a letter of the alphabet, you use the right-hand side. Okay, what you will see, the selection we made is for the general English name, so you will see all the figs are grouped together in this example that's on the screen. So broom cluster fig, boo-boo fig, coastal strangler fig, common wild fig. So that's what happens when you choose to group them by English names. Okay. Now, if we click on an image or an example, so if I maybe use this coastal strangler fig, you can press on the image or on the tree name, and what will happen is it now goes into a specific species. And there are 4 things that I want to point your attention to. At the bottom, you will see there's images, which is now highlighted, info, map, or in Apple, it's called distribution, and sightings. You will see if you have an Apple device that the info and the map is switched. That does not matter, it's got the same information. Okay, in the images, there will always be 2 artworks, so a color one and a picture of the leaf, and then there will be other information. So if there's subspecies, you will see a map, and if there are pictures attached, you will see them when you scroll down. Most of the plants have got additional photos, but all plants will have 2 artworks. If we now go to distribution, so if I click on the image which has the outline of South Africa, the map, you will see it goes into an interactive map. And this one you can zoom into. So if I zoom in by using your 2 fingers to zoom in, you will see you can get quite accurate with this map. So this is the distribution of each species. You have this interactive map, and you will see it's very handy when we use the location search that we will be showing later on. The next option that we have is information. And if you click on this, this is where we've used all the available information we could find in reliable sources. And this has got more information than most field guides because we have unlimited space, unlike field guides which have to decide what they put in. And then to repeat, you will see this original version is in normal English or plain English. And when you select the botanical version, you will see here in this information section that the information is in classical botanical terms. And then very useful that we add at the bottom, there are uses if it's available, and also gardening information. So for those of you who would like to plant indigenous trees, each and every tree in our app that has got full information will have gardening information available as well. The last thing I'm just going to press on it is you have the option to record your personal tree sightings in this app. Now, if we go to the back button, you will see at the top of your screen, there's a little back arrow that goes back to our tree list. And then if we click on the home button, we will get to the home screen again.
Right, and now we're going to do a swap over. And this is a hand-holding exercise because Marié is going to be working the machinery of the app and I'm going to be talking. So we're going to discover how well we work together. What I'd like to do now is talk about the top left button location. Marie's going to push on that. And what comes up is 1, 2, 3, 4 options and bioregions, which we are just busy updating. We've got some very exciting new information and we're removing it for the moment. So we're only going to talk about those 4. Let's start with all of South Africa, because that'll show you how many trees are actually in the app. It's what Marié showed you a minute ago, 1177 trees. If we go back to location, and instead of 1177, or you might have 1399, or you might have 155 if you're on the evaluation version, Marié, click on current location. Now watch carefully, this is incredibly exciting. Marié is in Potchefstroom, and in Potchefstroom, because it's a pretty flat plain area, there are only 107 trees. I've just done the same. I'm in the Highveld, and because of all our valleys and our little mountains, mine is 207. I imagine there's some of you who in KwaZulu-Natal, you were a high number. If you're out towards the eastern coast, you might be at many as 450. Now let's see how that works. The next thing is select from the map. So if Marié pushes that, we now have a map. Can we stretch it a little bit, Marié, just to sort of, yeah, that's fine. And maybe, sorry, no, not so much, but yeah, pop your selection down by putting your finger on a point just north of Durban, sort of on the way to say Richards Bay. If Marié puts, if you put your finger on there, select location, 499 trees. So Marié on 107, I'm on 207, and there on the Dolphin Coast, 499. Let's go across into the Karoo and see what happens if we hit. You had a good spot, I think. You knew what you were going to hit in the...
This one is in the middle of the Karoo.
Whereas Bloemfontein, 55. You know, guys, there is no other way, any other way available where you can pull this off. So we start with 1177 trees, and with a tap on the screen, you get down to the 55 trees that you can expect to find there. And that includes some number, 20 or so, of alien invasives. So if you're only looking for indigenous, I can assure you that number will be around about 45. It is an extraordinary thing to be able to start with over 1,000 trees and suddenly only have the choice of this very few number. Now, I want you to play with this weekend or this week at home, get to know it, enjoy it, and learn what a very powerful tool it is. Now we're going to highlight the search button on the home screen, and we're on the home screen and hit the search button. Right. And then we get our main tree search. Over the next few sessions, we'll work our way through this. But we want to now emphasize the main features. The key of what we are doing in this app is it is a random entry. So if you find yourself looking at a tree with a bright red flower, you can start with flowers. If you want to, and then you've got a lot of questions that you can answer about flowers. Back to the main search, you push on the tree and you immediately go back to the tree itself. I'd like to push leaves and go through that, because there's one thing we want to teach you as we finish up. This comes up as your first picture on leaves, and I can imagine the faces of a few of you throwing your arms in the air and saying, I never knew, I can't find the difference between simple and compound leaves. We've covered that in the app. The third thing says, I do not know if it's simple or compound. Now, if you press on that, what we have to explain is every leaf has a blade. And here we're looking at a twig, and at the end of a twig, there are some little small growth points. If we click on that choice, because there's a growth point at the end of the twig, and Marie clicks on that, those are simple leaves. So these blades on the left-hand side, the little icons, those are simple leaves, because if we go back, please, Marie, to the picture before, those were growing on a twig that had a growth point at the end. If you have a situation where instead of a twig, which is meant to be brown, you have a green central line, and now these blades are growing off that central line, but there is no growth point at the end of that structure, then Marie's going to click on the right-hand side, and those are compound leaves. And compound leaves come in various forms and shapes. Right, I think we're going back now to my presentation. Here is a simple leaf, and we know it's a simple leaf because this is the twig, and at the end of the twig, there are these little small leaves, a growth point, very small, brand new leaves, whereas all of these are mature leaves and they get more mature as they go down the twig. So each of these blades are simple leaves. This is another example. These leaves are much smaller. They're the growth point than the mature leaves of the buffalo thorn. In the theoretical diagram, that's the leaf blade, this is the leaf stalk, and here's the twig. Now that growth point I showed you is one way. Another way that you can establish it's a simple leaf is that at the bottom of the leaf stalk, where it joins the twig, there is a leaf bud. This is a little bit more difficult to see in some species. It's very easy in this African olive. There are your leaf buds. And here, it's very difficult to see, but if you put your binoculars backwards, or if you use your phone camera and extend it with your fingers, stretch it out, you'll see that leaf bud, the axillary bud. Look how clear it is. You can even see the hairs on the little leaf stalk. Once you have that leaf bud, and there's one blade on the end, it is a simple leaf. It is really not difficult. But if you don't just take a deep breath and learn that, you will never really understand trees and be able to identify them easily. The compound leaf is different. Here, the leaf bud is down at the bottom. All these blades are attached to a leaf stalk in the middle, and there is no growth point at the end. The growth point doesn't occur on a compound leaf at the end of the leaf. It has a leaf bud down here, and there will be a growth point at the end of this twig where other leaves will come off and the growth point will be there. Here it's very clear, no growth point, and here's the leaf bud. So the showy calpurnia is a compound leaf. Those pictures do the same thing. Right, we are just about at the end of tonight, and those are the products we've been talking about. Want to acknowledge the photographers. Thank you very much indeed. And just before I hand over for questions, I would love it if you have a look at this list of homework for the week. If you're sincere about wanting to learn to ID trees, you should practice these things until this tool of the TreeApp is not a difficult thing way beyond you and you feel you can't manage it. It is simple as long as you get familiar with it. And then next week, we'll move more into the arena of how you see things. Do you remember them well? How you find the distinct features, those fixed characteristics.
Well done, Val and Marie. Thank you. That was fantastic. Folks, we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A time now. There's a lot of thank yous coming through. Farah, it's so nice to have you on board again. And he's just saying this was really great. Thank you. This was so inspiring, writes Sally. Inspirational, writes Graham. Thanks. What a great start. Well done. From Robert.
I'd like to make the offer. We are very sincere that we want people to become competent in the app. Yeah. I mean, we're enthusiastic about it. We love it. And we know that a lot of people struggle with it. So we want to try and make it accessible for people. So if anybody has a query, just pop it down in an email to us at ask@TheTreeApp, and you mightn't get an immediate response. We will try to answer any queries you send us. And if it's a complicated one, we might ask that we have a phone call, but we'll deal with any queries that anybody sends in.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question from Austin. Does the tree app use only the new names, e.g. Acacia versus Vacciella?
You know, we won the World Cup. We're just going to have to know that we're great at some things, but we didn't really handle the ball terribly well in that whole Acacia story. And it's gone. It's finished. That was a big game we lost. And it's actually quite helpful. I will... very quickly, there are two types of acacia now in South Africa. There's Vacciella and there's Senegalia. And the Vaccellias have long, straight thorns. And so that's my finger up. And their flowers are, how can I show it, a small round ball. So the thorn is straight and the flower is a round ball. Senegalias, the thorn is a hooked thorn and the flower is on a long stalk. So actually, I found it very useful. I can now read that it's acacia, the very hard word xanthophylla, which is fever tree. And because it's a Vaccellia, I know it's got a straight thorn and I know it's got a small round flower. So I think we have to swallow hard. What we have done is we've kept the name acacia in the common names. So we still call it fever tree acacia, sweet thorn acacia, umbrella acacia.
Sorry, if I can come in here as well. We've got all the synonyms in the app as well. So if you search for acacia, it will pop up the Vaccellias, and then you will see when you look at one species, it's got all the synonyms and all the conceivable common names that we could find. That's also in the app.
I think for the acacia karoo, that's Vaccellia karoo now, I think we've got something like, oh, I've forgotten, I'm going to make it up and I'm going to be wrong. But it's over 30 names in all the different vernacular languages that we've got, English and Afrikaans. So we have really done a very good job. And as Marié says, if you put any name into the bar at the top, that tree will come up. It's very interactive. It's once you get confident and it will never break. You can never gear what's in there. There's nothing you can do to destroy the data. So it doesn't matter what buttons you push or how much you scroll or where you go. You can always go back to the beginning again, go to the home screen and start again from scratch. I see we have a chat in from Kim Brett, who's telling us thank you very much. And thank you, Kim. You're well known to a lot of people who have come in on this evening. So thank you, Kim Brett.
Thank you, Sandra.
Well, I'm going to go straight to the botanist. I can't possibly answer that. Marié?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, sometimes it's what's growing on it, lichens and stuff, and also the age. As the bark gets older, it sometimes weathers and then it turns a different color. So a young tree, when the bark is very thin and alive, it will have a certain color, and then as goes with secondary growth, and then as this tree enlarges, the older bark sort of dies, and then it can get another color. And otherwise, just the genetic makeup of that tree. But yeah, definitely young trees look different, and as that bark ages, it will have specific patterns. I see one person is asking about tree listers. We added that in there. We didn't talk about it, but that is a free online website where you can list your trees. So all the indigenous trees that you've seen. So you can just type it into your on a website on the browser, and you will see it's a very nice interactive online. And you can check all the trees that you've seen, and there's also rankings, so you can see who's got the most trees in South Africa. So yeah, please go and look at that, and it's completely free, and it's just a good way for you to list all the trees that you've seen and get some friendly competition to see who's got the most trees.
Marié, we must welcome Eugene Mole this evening, who I hope is out there. He did register, and Eugene is our top lister at the moment with 900 odd trees. And that's quite a lot to try and catch up on. Thank you very much indeed for your feedback. That's very, very helpful. Right. On that happy note, thank you, everybody. The watchers and the workers and the coordinator, thank you.
That's all for this evening, folks. Thank you for the chat has been very, very busy, and the Q&A has been very busy as well. That's great. If your question wasn't answered, please do send it through via ask@TheTreeApp.co.za, and I'm going to end the session shortly. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you will join us again next week. Same time, same place, Wednesday evening, 6 p.m. SA time, and we look forward to working with you again then. Take care, everybody. Cheerio.